Welcome back to the Behind the Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Roger Abel, back with Elias Randall. And today is one of my favorite days of the year, Turkey Day.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too. What are your plans for the day?
Well, I'm going to eat a lot of food. And when I say a lot, like I'm a 3-plate Thanksgiving dinner person.
Well, 3 plates at one time or like 3 plates throughout
the day.
Okay, well, that's reasonable. It's like round 1 is lunch. Round 2 is dinner.
Yeah.
Round 3 is after football.
Yeah, and I'll be skipping dinner the day before and breakfast.
Oh, so you do a 24-hour fast going into this deal?
I get mentally prepared.
That's awesome. Are you smoke the turkey, right? You do the big.
I do. Actually, I have and always do, but then this year someone else in the family wants to do it, so I just kind of got shoved to the side. And
are they bringing a turkey or smoking a turkey?
They're gonna smoke a turkey.
So do you feel like this is an attack on your smoking skills, or
no?
Like
because
they're
I know,
unhappy with how it's turned out? Or?
No, everyone really likes it when I do it. I just think that they want it. It's my father-in-law. He wants to do it this year, so. And the party's at his house, so I said, "Oh, okay, then I guess I won't."
Yeah, right on.
So I have a turkey in the freezer and no plans of using it.
We could have a premier holiday party. You could smoke it away.
Oh, I'll still cook it. I like smoked turkey. I actually don't know why I don't make it more often.
It's not that hard, right? Do you have like a pellet grill, or what do you got?
So I do a pellet Traeger for all poultry. So it's easy. I just set the temperature. I have I do a wet brine for a day and a half, and then I let it sit in the fridge, like uncovered on a little drying rack, some paper towels underneath it. Yeah, if you leave it in the fridge for a day or two, it helps the skin be more crispy when you cook it because it starts to dry out. But yeah, everyone likes it, but I don't get to do it this year, so
yeah, Thanksgiving's one of my favorite holidays.
Yeah.
You know why? Great food, expectations are low, no toys to put together.
Yep, no toys.
I mean, like, what's the expectation for Thanksgiving? It's, hey, we're going to get together, we're going to have a fun meal, and then we're going to sit around and watch football the rest of the day. It's pretty relaxing. Now, we've talked about past, my wife used to go out on Thursday night and do Gray Thursday and then Black Friday. But my wife informed me that she doesn't even think Black Friday is a thing anymore.
Oh, it's not?
She told me it's not a thing anymore because now, like, Saturday is Small Business Saturday. So she's going out on Small Business Saturday. And Cyber Monday.
Support local. Good.
Which I think that is cool. I mean, it works out really well for me because you can imagine what I'm going to do Saturday afternoon while she's shopping.
What is that?
I'm going to sit in the Green Monster.
Your tree stand?
Well, my blind. I prefer to stay warm this time of year.
Yeah.
But with that said, I think some of the things that are really neat about the holidays is, one, you get together as a family, but two, sometimes it's a good chance to have, more serious family conversations. And it's not Christmas where, I feel like Christmas is a really serious holiday. Like, people take it pretty serious. Thanksgiving's laid back a little bit. But one of the things we've had questions from clients and listeners about is, hey, how do I start a conversation with either my kids or my adult kids about saving money? And this makes me think a little bit about how the landscape of retirement and investing has changed over the last 50 years. I'm going to venture to guess when our parents were young adults, their parents weren't concerned about how they were going to bring up saving and investing to their kids. Because at that time, the primary source of retirement in America was Social Security and a pension. And because of this massive shift, and we've talked in the show before about how I feel like there might be a generation that's kind of missed out because they had to learn about 401k investing and IRA investing and Roth IRA investing all on their own because their parents were, privy to a pension. It just makes me think that they don't know how to bring this up to their kids, how to make sure their kids are responsible. And as parents, like I'm sure you're worried about your kids' financial health at some point in the future, if not already thinking about it now. So I thought going into the holidays, it would be a good time to just have an open conversation about, hey, if I want to talk to either my 18-year-old or my son or daughter who just got married, or even my, child who's 38 years old and I don't think's that responsible with money, how do I bring it up and talk to them without them getting offended?
Should we start with some things, some good questions to ask, or things that maybe you shouldn't ask?
I'm a positive person. So let's talk about how to actually start the conversation.
Yeah, so I think there's keep in mind.
Let me tell you why I think that's important, though. I think it's important because if you go start telling somebody what they shouldn't do right away, psychologically they're going to shut down. They're like, oh, mom and dad are bossing me around again. Because that's what I would do to my parents. If it just rapid fire started out, hey, you should be doing this. You're not doing this. Well, okay, I'm like, whatever. But if it's open-ended and it's a nice, a conversation that's not combative, I think it can be very, very powerful.
It can. And I think with young people, kind of the beginning understanding is you can start small and still accomplish pretty good things over time. So I think a good question, especially if it's a parent asking a younger person, maybe a question around, do you know the advantage of, do you know an advantage you would have as an investor over someone my age? Well, what would that maybe be? Well, you have a much longer time horizon. You're young, so you can start with a smaller amount. And we have a hypothetical here in the show notes. So like a 25-year-old, it's the difference between a 25-year-old and a 50-year-old making a one-time investment of $1,000 and earning 10% average annual return until you are 65 years old. So this would be since 1920. Well, the reason they use 10% since 1926, that's what the market has done. So the 25-year-old one-time $1,000 investment ends up being $53,700, right? That's 40 years that the money was invested. If you're 50 and that money's invested for 15 years, it's $4,454.
I think there's another...
That's a huge difference.
Huge. I think there's another, kind of trick out there that would be good to use with your kids too. Rule of 72.
What is the rule of 72,
rule of
Roger?
72
please explain.
You take your assumed interest rate. So let's just use 7%, 7.2%. Divide the interest rate by 72. It's how many years it takes for your money to double. So
in that example, it'd be 10 years.
In 10 years. So you have a 25-year-old, they put $5,000 away. They're going to double their money every 10 years. So 25 to 35 is 1. They get 4 doubles, right? 40 divided by 10 is 4.
Yes.
They have 4 doubles. So a $5,000 deposit at 7% a year turns into 10, 20, 40, 80,000. And it's a really easy way to work through the numbers because most people aren't that mathematical. But if you can talk about how many times your money doubles with people, they start like, whoa, wait a minute. So I can put 5,000 away and it's worth 80. And if you really want even better numbers, people that don't know this out there, but if you would have invested, let's say you have a 10-year-old child, and this is one of the strategies I'm going to use for my kids once they turn 10. They're going to start working here. They're going to work enough to make a wage that they can max out a custodial Roth IRA. But let's just say we do 5,000 a year. If you park 5,000 a year in the S&P 500 for 50 years,
and 65.
Well, it turns into $1 million.
Just a one-time
$5,000 deposit. You let it sit there for 55 years, turns into $1 million.
So think if you did that for 10 years in a row.
I'll do it for 5. I had this conversation with my wife because I think a lot of people want to leave a legacy, right? but they don't want to have to sacrifice their retirement. Most people aren't in the luxurious place of saying, hey, great, I'm going to leave each of my kids $5 million and I get a great retirement too. But just think about this. A lot of retirees could take $5,000 a year and put it in an account for somebody for 5 years. So my two girls, have them work, get a wage, custodial Roth IRA, do that for 5 years is $25,000. That's $5 million on a $25,000 investment. Like,
and even, and they're right, things will be much more expensive when they're 65. I think if you have $5 million,
it's like
even,
two today.
Right, but yeah, you'll still be okay.
Well, that's assuming they never ever save a dime the rest of their life.
Right. They don't do any of their own saving.
They don't do any of their own saving. So that said, it's a good way, just a good conversation. Rule of 72. There's a lot of great charts out there where it'll just show you, hey, this is how much if you save at what interest rate you'll have. I think another great question to ask your kids, because saving money for like the first 10 years, for all intents and purposes, there's zero excitement around it. I mean, you have
you don't have enough.
$10,000.
You just don't have enough in your account to really, okay, you got $10,000, you made 20%.
Like $2,000. So maybe a question to ask, what are your goals? Do you want to be a millionaire someday? Not everybody's goal is to have the maximum amount of money, right? I mean, and that's okay. Doesn't have to be. But if you can start to set out some goals and you can back into the number. So you have a 25-year-old that says, yep, I want to be a millionaire, mom or dad. Great. A 25-year-old to be a millionaire, assuming 10% rate of return, which is about what the market's done the last 50 years, give or take a little. If they invest $160 a month, so $40 a week at 10%, they'd have $1 million by the time they're 65. So easy way to spin it on your recent college graduate who has their first job. Hey, do you want to be a millionaire? And what kid's going to say, no, I don't want to be a millionaire? None.
Right. No, I don't want that.
But there's the number. So we've just given you the number. It's $160 a month from 25 to 65 gets you to $1 million.
And I think that makes it a lot more, I think overcoming the whole, when you're young, I don't have extra money. I don't have enough to do it. Right. Well, what's $160 by 4? What's that like?
$40, $40 a week. It's giving up Chick-fil-A one time a week.
Right. So if you really start to break it down, so $40 a week,
$6 a day.
There you go.
$6 a day.
$6 a day.
$6 a day, and you can be a millionaire.
Right. So it's easy. It's easy to think, I don't have extra money, but then when you start to think, well, it's $40 a week. You can probably manage that. And how many, okay, here's an easy one. How many of us waste $20 every week on just stuff that we do or buy that we could go without? Plenty. So that's half of the 40 right there.
It probably goes into a bigger discussion of like, okay, we're talking about like how to save money. The first part of this discussion is probably like, hey, what's the budget look like? Like if you did a budget with a 25-year-old who arguably has the least amount of responsibility they are ever going to have in their life, right? I mean, let's say you're 25, you're not married, no kids, you might be living at home still.
Your life's pretty inexpensive.
And you create a budget and you put as the very first line item on that budget, retirement savings, $160 or $40 a week. I guarantee you'll hit it because you're going to pay yourself first. Dude, let me break down how easy this really is. Let's say you have someone making $20 an hour. This is how you think about this. You're making $20 an hour, right? The first 2 hours you work of the week, you're paying yourself with those first 2 hours. The rest of the week, you're giving your money to somebody else. That's it. The first 2 hours of the week, you saved the money for you for the first 2 hours. It's all it takes. From 25. Now, you made a good point. $1 million isn't going to be $1 million like what it's worth today. You're going to have to save a lot more money to have the retirement you want, but you can get on the right track. And once again, $160 isn't a whole lot of money now. I mean, most entry-level jobs pay $15 to $20 an hour.
Yeah. Well, and go spend $160 at the grocery store. See what you get. It just doesn't buy what it used to.
I spent $160 on made good bars the other day.
Made good bars? What's a made good bar?
Well, I have a daughter who has a tree nut allergy. So a lot of the like breakfast bars or snack bars and little granola stuff that's out there, made in a facility with tree nuts. She can't have it. So we found a brand that she can have. Guess how much it is every time I swipe that box?
How much is a box?
$4.99. $4.99. $4.99.
How many come in a box?
8. But point is, I bought a lot of boxes the other day.
Gotta have them.
Well, because both my kids like it. But I think your point is there's nothing cheap at the grocery store. Like nothing. Even Laffy Taffies are 40 cents for the minis, 39 cents. So
Ouch.
Conversation about, hey, how do we save money? I think then the conversation goes into where to save this money. And for young people, because they have time, their number one advantage is getting some tax-free growth. Talk to your kids about paying taxes now versus later.
Yeah, so you're
Roth.
you're suggesting start a Roth account if you're young.
They're in the lowest tax bracket they'll likely ever be in, right? I mean, they're making the least amount of money, so their taxes are only going up. Why wouldn't you try to contribute as much as you can while you're paying the least in taxes to an account that grows tax-free forever and distributes tax-free if you wait till you're 59 and a half? Like pretty simple.
Right, and I don't think you're going to be unhappy if you have $1 million, $2, $3 million, whatever it ends up being in a tax-free account. I don't think you would be upset with that decision.
I'm going to ask you a question. Do you wish you would have started saving earlier?
I wish I would have saved more earlier.
Okay.
I mean, I did start saving pretty early, but the amounts were small. And I, just like anyone else, could have done more.
So yes, you wish you would have been more aggressive.
Yeah.
I wish I would have been more aggressive. I've never had a person ever come in here that said, man, I'm happy I started saving that amount of money when I was 22. Know what every single person says?
I could have done a little more.
I wish I would have started sooner.
Wish I would have done
that's
more.
human nature, but kind of convey that to your kids. Like, hey, I get it. It's really beneficial because what happens if you don't do this and portray to your kids? And maybe you have to use your own life experience. This is where there maybe is an open conversation about money. And hey, here's the mistakes that we made. We don't want you to make the same mistakes. And it's okay to admit you made a mistake. This week, I've had 3 or 4 people that are like, man, I wish I would have started this sooner. I wish I would have done this sooner. Everybody wishes they would have done it sooner because we all did the same thing. Graduated, got the first job, bought a new car, went out to eat with our friends, went to the bar, didn't save anything for the first 2 or 3 years. You're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I have forever to do this. And then you look at these numbers and you're like, man, did I really just miss out on all that money?
Yes,
and you did.
Yep.
So those are some things or ways to start the conversation. Don't make this negative. I think there's also things that you should try to avoid saying, Elias. Right? There's things that are going to put people into just this shutdown nature, and you're going to put them on the defensive. And 1, they're not going to respond, but 2, it's going to kind of wreck Thanksgiving.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't wreck your Thanksgiving like that. But what are some things what would be an approach that's maybe not as reasonable?
So I think the first thing to remember is everybody has different goals in life. And depending upon where you are in life, your goal is likely different. So I'm just thinking when my kids are 20, it's like 12 years, I'm going to be like 58. And my goals at 58 are different than a 20-year-old. 55 and 58, and you're looking to retire, a lot of times your most important goal is saving for retirement and getting to retirement. Remember, that's not what it is for your...
It's a fire that's burning
brighter
in your life. Yeah.
Right. So I'd say the first thing to do, not to do, is don't tell your kids, hey, investing is the most important financial goal you should have right now.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go, well, Mom and Dad, that's not my goal. And all of a sudden,
there's a lot of things on their mind. It should be, should it be part of your life? It should, but I don't think it should be the biggest focus.
Well, guess
what?
It
should be habit. It should be a habit you're starting to build and do, but it shouldn't be the main thing you think about. I mean, this money, once your money's in the retirement account, you can't use that until you're 59 and a half. So it's like, okay, see you later.
Do you know why it's the number one concern for most people in their 50s?
Well, because they're going to retire in 10 years.
Well, that's part of it. The other part is they didn't start saving the first 10 years. So they're trying.
Well, they might feel unprepared.
They're making up, so it has to be their number one priority. And they feel like if they can tell their kids, this is their way of telling their kids what they did wrong without admitting what they did wrong. Right? This should be your most important goal. They're not saying, well, I think this should be an important goal because this is what I did and this is how I messed up. These are the mistakes we made. No parent wants to admit to messing up, right? We think we did it all right. I mean, at least I do.
Really?
Not really.
You really think that?
No, of course I don't.
Yeah.
I'm jokingly saying it, but I think that's hard to do. So first thing is don't put them on the defensive, right? That's just a little too direct. I think the second thing that I would avoid saying if you're trying to have this conversation with a family member, don't tell them they need to stop spending so much and start saving more. There's nothing beneficial to that because now what you've just done is told them what's important to you and not what's important to them.
And it's a lecture.
It's a lecture.
You need to stop spending. You need to start saving. It's okay to do both.
And all in kids, they go on the defensive. Hey, this is just mom and dad trying to tell me what to do again.
Yeah, there they go again.
Here's a good example, Elias. Even with young kids, I can take my kids to the gym and try to teach them some basketball stuff. Do you know how well they listen to me? They don't.
No.
The coach tells them. They're dialed in. They're paying attention. Yeah, that sounds good. They try it. But if dad tells them, like, no, we're not doing that. It's just amazing.
Yeah. There's no way he could be right. He just lives at the house.
Yeah. All right, the third thing. So first thing, things to say. Second, things not to say. When you're reviewing things not to say, just think before you talk about it. Will this put them on the defensive? That's really what you're trying to not do is get them defensive because one, we don't want to have an argument, and two, we don't want to ruin Thanksgiving. You may or may not have had your pie yet.
Yeah, don't ruin Thanksgiving over it. But are they good lessons? Yeah, there's just your approach is probably going to determine the success of the interaction.
So then the third thing is figure out how to handle the objections because there's going to be objections before they happen. And I promise you the number one objection you're going to hear, I don't have enough money to invest.
And we talked about that a little bit already. You can start when you're young, you can start with a smaller amount. And I think, will that smaller amount be enough to accomplish what you want to? That's a different question. But starting somewhere that is doable, you can consistently do it and then increase it annually over time. I've always been a big proponent of that. There's nothing wrong with as you make more money, save a little bit more money. And then it's not noticeable. Because if you go from 0 to 100 with your savings, well, now your lifestyle's all out of whack and you don't have the money you want to spend, right? So it's like now you're almost enforcing this habit that's really uncomfortable and negative. Where if it's something you can stick to, something you can do and make steady increases over time, that's how you're going to have the most success and also be able to live some life while you do it too, right?
For sure.
I mean, people say YOLO, like you shouldn't YOLO with all your dollars, but you should live a little bit and have some fun.
Here's what I would tell my kids. If you save more early, you're going to get to YOLO later.
Yep.
You are because you're not going to have to make up for what you didn't do earlier. Like there's only so much YOLO you get to do if you're making $50,000 a year as a college graduate.
True.
I mean, all right. Second one you might run into, I'm afraid of losing money in the stock market. This is super common, especially if You know, you had kids who their first investment happened during COVID or whatever. They might think that this stock market is a, really volatile thing. What are the ways you think you handle that with kids who say, I don't want to do the stock market because it's risky or it's volatile. I'm afraid to lose money. How do you handle those conversations?
And this is probably more common for young people right now with the last several years that we've had, especially in 2021 and 2022. I mean, how many new investors came into the investor class, right? Because market's going up, fear of missing out. There was the, the different trades and the Reddit threads and just all the stuff. So a lot of people came in probably, right? And then maybe their first investment, they didn't make any. Maybe their money went down right away. For young people, when the market goes down, right, you now have an opportunity for your money to purchase more shares. So it's not necessarily a bad thing when the market goes down for younger investors. A lot of times the market correcting is healthy really for the stock market in general, but two, it's good for your contributions that are going in. I mean, at my age now, 35, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, I don't want to see the market go down because the clients' accounts go down. But for my own personal accounts, not such a bad deal because I believe it's going to come back and then I can buy more shares too.
I think the takeaway is just ingrained in your kids, the longer you're in the market, the lower the risk goes. We never had a 20-year period of time with a negative stock market return, any rolling 10-year period of time. So
there's that.
The longer you're in, the less risk there is. And just let them know this isn't about trading the account. This is about buying something and holding it for a long period of time and let it work out. So we just wanted to give people some tips with today being a fun holiday, how to make it a fun conversation. And maybe your kids are already kicking butt and doing a great job saving money. And then just, tell them, great job. Really think what you're doing is good and encourage them. And, but if you're concerned, here's some ways and tips that you could go about that conversation with your family. So Elias, I feel like today's show is actually really a lot about open communication with family members. And I think there's some things that individuals who are looking to retire, there are people that I believe they should speak to before they make that decision and ask some key questions to them, right? This isn't all about kids. Adults who are looking to retire, they still have decisions to make because once they retire, they're kind of shaping how their next 20 and 30 years of life is going to be. And we've come up with some key people and questions that they should be asking before they make this decision. I'm going to kick it off because we were talking about, I'm jumping forward a little bit, but I'm going to kick it off because we were talking about parents asking kids questions or adult children. I actually think before you retire, you should consult and talk to your adult children about this because they're going to have some insight. And I'm going to use my personal example here. And my parents came to me because clearly we helped them with their financial plan. But on a side note, there's things that I know about my parents. Like I know what their hobbies are. I know how they want to spend their time. I realistically know what their spending patterns are. Everybody knows their parents' relationship with money, whether we want to admit it or not. You do, right? You can look and say, well, my parents don't spend anything. My parents are spendthrifts. You can figure it out. People know. And so I think one of the things, to talk to your adult children about is, hey, do you think this is a good idea? What do you see us doing in retirement? But two, one of the things you talk to your adult kids about is where will you be living in retirement? Because a lot of people plan to move once they retire.
Yeah. So here's my question. When you're going to retire and you ask your adult child, where will you be living when I retire? Probably has more to do with potentially having grandchildren in the future and wanting to be around them than actually being around the adult child.
I'm 1,000%. I shouldn't say that. I'm very confident that where my wife today thinks she wants to retire will have very little to do with where she wants to retire and a lot to do with where our kids are, because our kids are going to be graduating college about the same time we would potentially retire. I mean, you know my thoughts on retirement. I don't really want to, but my financial independence date is around that time. Well, if they're where we live, then, you know, my wife a lot of times will talk about, hey, I really want to move. You know, the day our oldest daughter's done with high school, I want to get a place in X area, you know, California, Arizona, whatever, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, I have this feeling that that's going to change based upon where these kids are. Because are you really going to be on the other side of the country from your family? Or are you going to go where they're at?
And that's it's also one of the most common concerns people bring up with us. And one of the bigger motivating factors to actually retire. A lot of people, they know that they probably have enough money to retire, but they're working. Well, then they'll have their first or second grandchild, right? And then that, a lot of times, to me, that's when the conversation changes, and that's really when they want to push and just pull the trigger and retire. And it has a lot to do with they want to be available for their family and their grandkids. And everyone knows being a grandparent's more fun than being a parent, right? Because you don't have any of the responsibility of discipline and making sure that those kids grow up to be good adults, right? No one's grandparents ever got blamed if they didn't end up being a good person.
You mean they can get 5 cookies instead of 1?
5? What stops them at 5? Yeah, as many as they want.
I mean, that is the truth. So that's probably an important decision. Hey, where are you guys going to live? Because maybe we want to be close to our family, and that's going to help shape how somebody decides where they may actually retire. So talk to your adult kids. Now, like I said, I skipped ahead. The first person you should consult is probably your spouse. Right? Hey, I'm thinking about retirement, but I think most people, I take that for granted. I think most people have already had the conversation with their spouse about, hey, I'm thinking about retiring in a year or two. I could be wrong, but I just don't see very many situations where someone just comes home and says, hey, I'm going to retire next week, and they haven't had any discussion with their spouse.
Well, yeah, that's an really important discussion. And there was a Wall Street Journal article I was taking a look at the other day, and there was a couple that they had this conversation and found out that I believe it was the husband. The husband was really visioning like a winding down period in his life, and his wife was really visioning a more active lifestyle, right? So that's a good conversation to have, because now you're going to have some sort of compromise, right? To live the life together that both of you want to have. But the way the article was written, it made me feel like, so that was probably pretty insightful for those two. And they're probably happy they did it, because now they know the expectations of the other and can make choices that benefit both people. And then both people feel good about what's going on and what's happening.
Here's one that, we brainstormed, and honestly, I hadn't thought too much about, but I think talking to your doctor about his or her experience with people that have retired. And one of the questions we came up with is, what have you noticed about patients who adjust well to retirement versus those who don't? Because not everybody is retirement a positive experience for. For some people, it's not positive. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I'm sure doctors have some insight. They know they work with a lot of most of their patients are retired people. So you could probably gain some insight into their views on people who maintain their health, right? Mentally and physically. And I think maybe even asking questions about things that maybe you don't want to know. Like there's a question here in the outline, is there something you know or that I'm refusing to acknowledge that would impact my future health? That's a pretty deep question to ask your doctor, your physician. Yeah, and I feel like I personally would be scared to ask that question, right? Because none of us want to know the things we're ignoring, basically.
Let me give you an example. your doctor knows your health habits if you're honest with them, right? Not everybody's honest with their doctor. How many people, we've seen it, they enjoy alcohol. They like to do happy hour. They retire.
I know lots of them.
Right. They retire, and what happens? They turn into an alcoholic.
A little too much happy hour.
Too much. Yeah. Your doctor could actually say, hey, my concern for you is this is what you've expressed that you like to do. With a lot more free time, happy hour turns in from once a week to daily, and it starts at noon. We've all seen it, right? You go to a restaurant or a watering hole at noon on Friday, and same person sitting at the bar, probably there every day. It could be a problem. So your doctor, there's some privy stuff that your doctor has, and not everybody else, number one, would probably be willing to tell you, right? Most people are going to be a little more filtered than your doctor, probably.
I would think so. And I think in addition to maybe even your doctor, I think there's some people at work that you could talk with and ask questions to. I think a great resource is going to be whoever is in charge of the benefit package. A lot of times it's a human resource manager.
For sure.
Because that's going to give you a good starting place for logistics of, okay, is there paperwork? What are my options? Are there any benefits that I can continue to have after I retire? You know, there's companies out there that they offer, or like you'll be able to keep getting company health insurance even after retirement. A lot of times you have to pay the premium, but there's different. You just want to understand what all the choices are and the options. And then I think if you have colleagues, people you've worked with for a long time that have either done it or getting close, ask them about their experience and what helped you be successful at it, and just get some real life examples from people and people that you trust on things that worked for them and things that they feel have gone well for themselves.
Obviously, your financial advisor, we kind of put them out of first position because the reason I did that was intentional. I think there's a lot of other things about retirement that are as just important as the money part, if not more important. I mean, money's your conduit to getting through retirement, but it's not how you're living your daily life. You know, if you've done a good job saving, money shouldn't be the primary concern. The primary concern should be, what's it look like? What am I going to do? How am I going to occupy myself? All those different things. But meet with your financial advisor so you understand how you're going to get this money out. One of the biggest concerns, we actually have another article about this for people who are retiring, is how am I going to distribute the money? How's it going to be dependable? How can I rely on it? It's why you go to a financial advisor, is to help bring a clear plan to how you're going to financially make it through retirement. And one of the exercises we've been doing with people, especially more recently, think about your retirement in 3 phases. What do I need to survive the entire retirement? How much money to survive, right? Because that's basic needs of everybody. 2, what do I want to accomplish in retirement? What are my wants? And then what do I wish could happen? Like, if I have enough money to meet my needs, do all the things I want to do, what are the additional wishes that are out there? Kind of the stuff that maybe I don't think I could do, but man, if I could, it'd be cool. That's how you start to craft a really cool financial plan. Or as Jonas would say, a really groovy financial plan.
Really groovy. There you go. Yeah, and a groovy spending plan. And those things, those are things that do need to be worked through. And I think our most successful clients and people that we work with, they've done a good job engaging in all that. And there's a lot of retired people that they're doing the things they wanted. They're doing the things they vision and set out to do. They're traveling, spending time with grandkids. And what they're not doing is spending time worrying about their money. I mean, we obviously have clients that worry about their money and stuff, but we also have a lot of very successful people that they kind of delegate all the planning and the worrying to us, and they just live their life and seem pretty happy doing it.
Yeah. And then the last person Ask a question to yourself. And this is the question.
Ask yourself, what's the question you should ask yourself?
What am I retiring to? Why am I retiring, and what am I retiring to do? For some people, it's just, I don't want to work. Okay. You have to have a goal here. It's not just because I'm supposed to retire. Got to have a plan of what you're going to do. Ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you can successfully transition? I had someone in yesterday, they're like, man, the first 3 months of retirement's weird. It's hard. But now she's like, this is great. She's been retired for about a year, probably 15 months. She's like, I really enjoy it. It's really great. Husband's getting ready to retire. He's really nervous about his transition. So just have some accurate reflection. Hey, how do I feel like I'm going to transition? Then if I don't feel like I'm going to transition well, how do I improve it? How do I make it so I'm confident about this What are the key things that would make me confident about transitioning from working to retirement? And then who are the people I need to consult to fix those things? Not that hard. It's just a little bit of accurate reflection.
And effort. You got to put the effort in to do a lot of that stuff. You know, even you think about someone who comes to us that wants to retire. It's not. We've done a really good job at simplifying the process for our potential clients, but what we can't take out of it is the level of effort that someone has to put in, right? There's a lot of stuff you have to provide. There's a lot of questions you answer. So it's just one of those things. It takes being mindful, and it takes a certain level of effort to put yourself in a good position. Now, I will say that more often than not, when people go through the process with us, what do they end up saying after it? Man, I feel so much better. I feel so much more confident that this is going to work out. I'm really happy I did this. Well, and those are all good things, right? And that's the type of feedback we want too, because we want to know what we're doing is helping people. You know, we know that the way you feel about your money a lot of times has a lot more to do with all the other stuff involved with it. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that.
Elias, I really enjoyed the show today. I want to wish everybody out there a happy Thanksgiving. Give them a gobble gobble. Just so everybody knows, my favorite part of Thanksgiving is the gravy. So I'm looking forward to a nice big plate of turkey and gravy today. With that said, thanks for listening. If you want to follow us on social, btwellshow.com. We're on Facebook, X, YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to our channels if you like the content and information that you guys are getting. Thanks for listening.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. There's no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure profit or protect against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.